Okay, so we're now working on the issue raised by Kathy about how different or how similar are philosophy and political science. So why bother with one or the other? And we want to clarify the distinction, if at all there's a distinction, or are they the same? And or their debates. So I'm starting off with philosophy. Area 1 is ontology. Area 2 is epistemology. Epistemology means how do we look at the world? The major ones I'll talk about would be, these are examples, and many, many more. Rationalism says we start with ideas first. Ideas, spirit, they're all in the same realm. Huh? Let me put it in a clearer way, not clear, more distinct, greater distinction. It's clear. Spirit, soul is another area. Matter is one area. Consciousness is the other area. And ideas, okay, that's realm 1 is matter, realm 2 is spirit. Then there's the debate between monism or dualism. One united body and soul, etc., and mind and so on, or dualism. And in sociology, you have rationalism, which means ideas first. That's how you look at the world. That will be like Descartes. I think, therefore I am, ergo, what is that? Cogito, ergo sum. Okay, ideas first. But then you have empiricism. It's observation first. Physical senses first. Sense perception first. Sense experience first. Okay. Then you have objectivity, which says, or objectivism, whether I see Kathy exists or not does not matter. You exist as you. You see what I mean? That's my example to explain. Subjectivism says, I don't know you exist. I have to smell, feel, touch, everything about you to know you exist. So it's very, very different ways of looking at the world. Okay. Sense perception versus things. Oh, there's another word for that. I'm so sorry. These are all big philosophy words. And it's good that you raised this question. Also, Asher raised a question to me last time. It's very confusing, too many things. It's true. It took me so many years on my own to learn. I never took a formal philosophy class as such, except logic. And then I taught political philosophy, but not philosophy as such. I would read on my own, wherever I am, the bathroom, on my bed. I just had books. So it's really too much, too many things going on. Okay, things in themselves. I'm sorry, that's another word. Very philosophical. Things exist in themselves, whether I perceive them or not. And then things for themselves, I think, is the other word. I'm not quite sure about this now. Things for themselves. That means you must have sensed it for it to exist. Okay. Okay, sorry for all of this confusion, but I think it might be better if you see it in writing. I hope so. Okay. And then another area is axiology, or ethics, or morality. One is the study of, that's ethics. Morality is the practice and the beliefs. Axiology is the big word with the logy at the end. They're all related, okay? Ontology, gnosiology, epistemology, axiology. So this is the concept of good and bad, and so on. Right and wrong. Okay. Then other areas. I have to do it this way so I can, okay. What else? Oh, logic. So you don't just write for the sake of writing, there are rules. This is one class I formerly took If A, then B, for example, you can only say if. It's wrong to say if not A, then not B. That's totally wrong in logic. There's reason behind it. You have to say if not B, then not A. So many people make wrong logical statements. Common people, maybe including me, everyone, the newspaper, commentators, hacks, everyone, because of wrong logic. Remember, I told you, be careful to make generalization. I say, all swans are white. I learned that in my philosophy class. Now, what if I find just one swan that's not black? Then my whole assumption is wrong. So be careful in making generalization. Also, when we do research, that's why I always say, don't assume all children experience XYZ. Don't assume all for Kathy, migrant workers are XYZ. We cannot. It's too impossible logically. That's why I say, give an example even of a success story, but then say it's only one. But you have to show it's not all migrant workers experiencing this, because that's logically wrong. Okay, that's a concrete application of logic. Okay, that has direct impact. And axiology, what do you prefer is good, like respecting the laws which the governments have ratified about the labor rights. So we're not asking anything new. It's already there. So it's only right that government respect the rights of migrant labor, for example. So that's a concrete application of axiology. Gnosiology application is if you are a rationalist, or if you are, then you would say, oh, the law says first. Then you are not, also in this sense, you are a, oh, I forgot the big word. This is a big word. You're either materialist or idealist. You are idealist if you say, you start with, there is a law on the rights of XYZ, of migrant worker. We have to respect the rights of migrant workers because there's a law. That's an idealist argument. But if you say, look at the condition of migrant workers, they are overworked, let's say, the majority are overworked, underpaid, and they work more than 8 hours, especially those domestics, and especially mostly women who stay at home or in the homes of their employers. So they're subject to all kinds of abuse. By the mere fact they are with the employers 24 hours a day. There's more probability. Then that is a materialist view, and that is an empirical view. Very different depending on your starting point. Okay, example of idealism, if you look at the law first, that's idealistic. Or if you look at the Bible first, it's idealist. You base on what is not life first. You like on written text first. But if you base on real life first, then you are a materialist. For example, what else? What can I say? I was thinking of something. Okay, and that's directly related to epistemology. If you look at material condition first, that's empiricism. Because you see the migrant workers suffering, that's sense experience. You see and they suffer. Both are sense experience. And that's, well, it's both objective and subjective because one and the other, they're two. You're observing and they are the ones suffering. Okay, but which comes first? Will tell you whether you're materialist or you are idealist. Okay, one example, you can look at justice in two ways. The world famous John Rawls, maybe Harvard professor, says there's a rule, something like fair treatment in a couple of words. That is an idealist view. He has a formula. That's how justice should be. But you have his student, Amartya Sen from Bengal, he's Indian, won the Nobel Prize. Oh, that's from Asher's country. He won the Nobel Prize in economics. Student of John Rawls. He is a materialist. He said it's wrong to say when we want to talk of, you might want to read his book. You can buy his book. On Justice, I think is the title. Rawls also called On Justice, but the take are very different. Amartya said, if you want to talk of justice, don't look at formula. Look at the real conditions of people first, and you will see if justice exists. So philosophy forces you to think, what do you want to look at first, the chicken or the egg? So if you are not conscious of it, oh, it's the same, they're talking of justice. But if you're conscious, what is he or she looking at first matters a lot, okay? Yeah, you can be materialist or idealist depending on which comes first. For example, a Christian Conference of Asia combines both the Bible and material condition. That's why in all of their statements, they look at the conditions of people. They have statements on migrant labor. They have statements on people on the move, is the vocabulary, I think, of the churches. People on the move, the suffering people. So they give, in Asia, it's called contextual theology. So okay, this is another example. It's contextual theology. It's applied to real world. Maybe, I don't know, the opposite might be systematic theology or something. I don't know, maybe. You just look at the text, maybe, huh? And then you look at the trends and so on, etc., etc. There's also, it's not right or wrong, it's a very different way of looking at the world. And then I think there's also called public theology. Yeah, I think that's a newer, trendier areas. Public theology. So you're looking at the real world first. And then there's I'm sorry, I shouldn't say favorite. One of my churches, National Council of Churches General Secretary, he died already, Secretary Dr. Feliciano Carino, he wrote a book and I always quote him. He says, oh, I'm bad, I cannot quote him properly. You might want to remind me, I can show you what he said. And I always want to, when he died, many theologians around the world wrote essays. I think this happens in many theological circles. When you die, people will write to commemorate you and they have a book. So, and then they had a quotation from him. He said something like this. When we look at the Bible and the people, we don't apply, this is what the Bible says, and then we do it. Something like that. I'm very bad. Please don't quote me. I might have misquoted it. He says, rather, we look at the people and then how we relate to the Bible. It sounds similar, but the philosophy is very different. One is idealist, the other is materialist. Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, this is really helpful. I'm not sure if he is attributed to this, but Ashay, you might find this helpful. One of my colleagues here, she says, it is not the New Testament, it is the Now Testament. Yeah, so it was a really good way to put that together in terms of, yeah, we can look at scripture, the New Testament, we can see what Jesus was doing as he was doing his earthly ministry. But what is the Now Testament? I don't know if that is helpful, but maybe that kind of encapsulates what you're trying to cite with this particular General Secretary. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ray. I'm not trying to, but just a way of trying to understand what you're saying, yeah?
Wonderful, wonderful, very helpful. So thank you. So that's why for a long time, the only theologians we read are Westerners. And then I wanted to find out what was the trigger, what happened when all of a sudden there's an explosion of non-Western theologians. I asked many theologians, they don't know. And then CCA, we also went soul searching. Every time we have a PATS, something like Council of Asian Theologians, there's a big meeting all the time, once in Sri Lanka, one in Bangkok, or Philippines. No one quoted Asian theologians. Say, why? What's the problem? And then I realized in the past, only Western theologians are recognized. It was only when there was this is social upheaval in Africa, in Latin American Asia, that the Westerners recognized Asian theologies as theologies. So you have Dom Helder, I forgot, Calderon, I think, and then Ernesto Cardenal, and many other names in Latin America. It's all because of suffering under dictatorship and so, and they thought of Jesus, and then and Archbishop Oscar Romero of El Salvador saying, if Jesus were alive today, so this is a materialist way of looking at Christianity, he would be the child in the street child. He would be the child laborer. Like, this is powerful contextual theology. It's still not forgetting Jesus, but applied to the real world. If Jesus were alive today, as a baby, he would be the malnourished child. So these are powerful. And then because of the suffering of the third world, Westerners now slowly recognize Bishop Desmond Tutu is a research area of Ashe. And then in East Timor, he won a Nobel, he was a Nobel laureate in peace. I forgot his name. But they both won. The other person is Jose. Oh my goodness, he's my friend. We campaigned for East Timor at Chulalongkorn University when Ashe was not born yet, for East Timor at the United Nations office in Bangkok. Jose Ramos Horta, okay. Both of them won the Nobel Prize for Peace. These are contextual theologians. In the Philippines, we had Ed de la Torre, and then the Christians for National Liberation, and of course, the National Council of Churches, United Church of Christ. The Protestant churches are more active theologically than the Roman Catholic. Reason, Roman Catholic, it's top down. You hear from Rome, this is what you do, from Vatican. But Protestants write and think and make their own, liturgy, everything. So this is a very different way of looking at the world. And that's why I love the Roman Catholic Church. To me, it's very ritualistic. You just read, memorize, sit down, up and down. I felt the spirit in me when I was with the first time I was with the National Council of Churches was in a fact-finding mission in Mindanao in southern Philippines. I was with the Catholic group, Task Force Detainees of the Philippines. We were investigating human rights violations. And there was Levi Bautista. He was with the Protestant group. I can't even remember the specific moment in southern Philippines. We were doing separate investigation of human rights violations. We crossed paths literally in a pineapple plantation. Said, oh, hi. They all knew each other. I didn't know them. Said, I'm Ray. I'm a volunteer of the Task Force Detainees. Oh, really? Okay. Well, wait. Then can I have your address and phone number? And finally, he said, well, can you give us a talk? And then from then on, I felt the passion of the Protestants. I said, wow, this is very different. I love this. And I left the Catholic Church. I think that specific time I realized because the Protestants were more engaged in society. I was with the Catholics, but it's different. They were also engaged in another way. But the Protestants were more open in collaboration with everyone else. Okay, so that's when I felt, I believe in contextual theology than just reading the Bible only. Because every time we do a fact-finding mission, and then we will have let's do a service. It is concretely related to the fact-finding mission. So I felt more alive, and the Holy Spirit, sorry to be theological, in me. So I feel the passion. So right now I am with Levi for this reason and with the Protestant churches. Okay. So sorry for that bit. This should be purely academic. It's academic. I'm talking about contextual theology. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for your important intervention. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, logic. Oh, there's also aesthetics. the concept of beauty. Okay. The concept of friendship. Many others. This is not my area of specialization. Okay. This is, I think these are the major areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, maybe the major areas now. And in the present time, the more important contributions to logic is Derrida. He's, and also I think Rorty, these are contemporary. Derrida would say, words, oh, I forgot. How can I forget? More importantly, Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein wrote 2 seminal works. He was the student of, how can I forget? Bertrand Russell. Everyone knows Bertrand Russell. So Bertrand Russell is a very well-known scholar and very important logician. So he had written many books, but he's also engaged. He politically, he was one of the founders of the CND. I forgot what that means. Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. The peace sign we have now is based on the initials of CND. I just don't know. Check the peace sign. You know the peace sign. Anyway, it came from this initial, so 1960s. So Wittgenstein was recognized by the teacher. Russell said, this guy is a genius. He's more intelligent than I am. So even the teacher recognizes the excellence of the student. The first book Wittgenstein said is, logic is plain and simple. A cat means a cat. But then Wittgenstein thought later, oh, I'm mistaken. It's not true. He said, initially, a cat means a cat. There's no other meaning. Then he says, well, let's say, Kathy, you're asking too many questions. A curiosity killed the cat. I meant you are too curious. Then it's another meaning. It's not the cat, it's you. Curiosity killed the cat. So he said, therefore, language is a game. There are many meanings. I may be sarcastic and use a word in a different way. And which is what we're doing, and especially politicians. When I say, this is the truth, that means they are lying. I'm sorry. Many times. Right? This is, we don't have enough budget, so we have to cut on social services. They're lying. We know that. But they're just giving more money to industry or something because they get lobbied. Okay, so it's a language game. So he's double genius. Language has 2 purposes. One, when we say a table, we really know what the table is. Number 2, no, it's just a metaphor. Or it could be used to mean something else that we're hiding, like lying. Okay, and Derrida, it's the same, more extension. There was a debate, I think in Cambridge, whether to recognize him, big debate as a philosopher, because they say he only deals with logic. That's so petty. Finally, they gave him the recognition that he's a philosopher. It was very controversial. Rorty, I think is even more controversial. I'm not sure about the exact word. He said something like death to the author. The meaning of the written text does not depend on the author. It depends on the reader. I can interpret Plato my way. That's why there are new interpretations of Plato. I told my friends who are teaching political philosophy, so how can, if I'm doing political philosophy, what can I publish? There's nothing new. Oh no, you're wrong. It's your interpretation of Plato that matters. It can be totally new. Then that gave me sparks of wisdom. Oh, you're right. So it's death to the author, meaning don't rely on the author for what the author said. Depend on your interpretation. The problem with that is then we cannot agree. Like now, the present problem, what is a male and a female? And you fall into trouble if you say a woman means this. So people avoid defining what is a woman, or else they will sue you, they'll kick you out of the university, and so on and so forth. disbar you, and so on. So that's the extreme. If it's death to the author, like, okay, so we cannot now rely on the dictionary as to what is a woman. Okay. Okay, so I think these are some of the major areas of philosophy. Okay, the major areas of political science. So are they different or similar? One area is political philosophy. Oh, I forgot. And philosophy can also be divided into, oh, how can I forget? This is my field, and not all of these. Well, maybe it's further down. Okay, maybe I put it here. It's political and social philosophy. That's only one teeny-weeny little bit of philosophy. That's why you see they're similar. Now, why are we doing it? Why call it philosophy? Why call it politics? Yes, because you caught this. You caught the political philosophy. It is political science, but it is philosophy too. It's in between. But the real home is philosophy, but political science say it is also one of our fields. Okay, good that you caught that. That's why the confusion. And then there was a break. After, like in the 1960s, they already said, oh, philosophy is not political science. They look down on political philosophy. They say comparative politics is science. There's a debate now. First there's politics and government, meaning you're looking, in the US, it simply means American government and politics. That's what you study in high school and in college, the politics and government. Sometimes called civics or citizenship education, etc. Comparative politics is you're comparing or looking at other countries. And then you have international relations, international politics, international law, diplomacy, international human rights, international laws of war, armed conflict, etc., etc. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the other area is research methodology. Then research methodology, each field has its own sub-vocabulary too, and different. For example, in history and philosophy, maybe they use the word thesis. But in most conferences you attend, social sciences, they don't like the word thesis, like, what are you talking about? It's not right or wrong, it's the tradition. So it's so confusing. In quantitative, it's hypothesis. It's similar, but different. And then the most acceptable vocabulary will be research questions and research purpose. The correct one, if it's quantitative, it's if it's a qualitative, it's quantitative, it's objective. These are all tribalistic vocabulary, okay? So the more acceptable vocabulary, the non-tribal, if you're quantitative, is hypothesis and objectives. If you are qualitative, it's research question and purpose. Thesis is more limited to philosophy and I think history. Again, not right or wrong. It's just each subfield has its own language. Okay, let me see. So if you are to make a Venn diagram, then you have political science, Paul's, and philosophy. They are different fields, but in between, you have political philosophy. It's common to both, but that's about it. And they have their own other specializations. Okay. So if your paper is philosophy, you look into these things. You can say there are two approaches to studying migrant workers: the materialist approach and the idealist approach, the empirical approach and the rational approach. That's a philosophical paper. And you're looking at the ethics, morality of protecting and violating the rights of migrant workers. That's your way of looking. If you're in political science, you would say, it depends. If you're in politics and government, Philippine government promotion of the rights of migrant workers. In comparative politics, you would say how the United Arab Emirates protects or violates the labor rights of Filipino migrant workers. That's comparative politics. International, it will be the Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers and Their Families in relation to the actual living and working conditions of Filipino migrant workers. Okay, and research methodology, you apply to all of the above. What are you using? Quantitative, qualitative, mixed method, etc., etc. I hope I answered your question, Kathy. It's a long, extended answer. Okay.
It's really helpful because as we go through each of the courses, and that's why I asked Ashe early. He said, this is the time you're taking philosophy right now. So I was also, because I still have to write my philosophy paper from a year ago, and I'm also trying to distinguish. I will write for this political science course, what I will write for the philosophy course, and the direction that I'm going in for my selected readings. I think they are all kind of related, but I think they're all have a very distinctive angle. So it's a way I really was confused, and it helps me to see really how you put this together, especially as I see the theology, because Ashe and I are both coming from a theological perspective.
Yes.
I never saw it like that before. So I'm glad you went the extra mile to put the theological perspective as well, because I also realized, I'm realizing that just as a personal note, and this, I'll end here because I really don't want to monopolize too much further, is being here in the Philippines as a missionary, I'm learning, I'm probably more steeped now in the materialism and thinking more in those lines. That's why maybe I mentioned this Now Testament. And I realized, though, the materialism is inviting me to a deeper understanding of idealism and want me to go back into the scriptures, because it really helps me to scripture new perspective. Yeah, I don't know, but Ashe, I hope it's helpful also. So I know I was asking the question, but I was asking because I think maybe Chris later, as he's hearing this recording, can also benefit too.
Okay. And thank you for sharing the Now Testament. Yeah, so it encapsulates how the Bible is used, the Now and the Testament together. Okay. And going back to, if you want to go to the class of Dr. Mark, did you use a book by, what's his name, McIntyre, Alistair McIntyre, on justice?
That is our main text. Yeah, one of our main texts.
Okay, that one. So the main point of the book is justice does not have only one meaning. Justice meant different things to different people, not only in different time, but also different authors. Let me try to look for the appropriate box. Okay, oops. Okay, so you have, from that, Alice, there, the book assumes you know a lot about philosophy already, and it already assumes you know each author. So Thucydides, for example, and then you have Plato, Aristotle, So these are some authors. So the approach of Thucydides is historical, and power decides who decides what is justice. So he is a historian. He wrote about the wars, and whoever won the war decided what is justice. So Plato, that book didn't go chapter 1 is Plato, chapter 2, but it all makes all the authors together. So it assumes you don't have a deep knowledge of each. So Alasdair MacIntyre basically synthesized all of those. So he kind of jumped to the synthesis. But I think if first-time reader in philosophy, you want to know each author first. So Plato has his own formula. Although first, before going to his formula, he did the Socratic dialectics first. There are debates. What is justice? And if I have a knife, you have to return the knife to me. That's justice. But what if after I give you the knife, I became insane? There's a moral issue. Should you return the knife to me, knowing I might kill somebody now? So it's another issue. And then another justice is power. If I have the power, I decide what's justice. So it's all a debate as to what is justice. Then Aristotle also has his own. Plato is an idealist. There's some universal idea of what is justice and we should follow it. Aristotle, the student, says he is different. No, there are different ways of achieving justice depending on the type of government. But both of them kind of look down on foreigners and women and slaves. That's the historical context that people don't see or don't look at, but they look down on women, slaves, both of them, and foreigners. The word for foreigners is barbarians. As in many major civilizations, they say that. Okay. So that's another view of justice. And then who else? Okay. And then the same with you have what's his name? Oh, John Rawls, more contemporary. He is more of metaphysical, another meaning. Oh, good that I raised this. View of justice. It's like one black box. This is how justice means. It's fixed. But non-dialectical, maybe that's a better way. Metaphysical, therefore non-dialectical. Unlike Plato, it's dialectical. So Plato has to show and prove one theory versus the other. But John Rawls, this is it. Fair treatment. It's longer than that. I don't know the exact quote now. Oh, and a veil of ignorance. That's another key word. That's why, remember, the Statue of Liberty has the blindfold, because you assume that you should treat everyone equally. There's a veil of ignorance. That's a key term that John Rawls used. Okay. What was I trying to say? Oh, yeah, I want to go back to philosophy. There is, I forgot, the dialectical approach versus the metaphysics. That's a problem. It has another meaning of the word metaphysics. Approach. The dialectical approach says, well, matter, for example, matter and spirit are related, are one and the same, but there's an interaction between the two. For example, if I'm hungry and I don't have money, but I need to eat, what do I do? Okay, your body says, I need to eat to live. But your mind says, I don't have money, so I cannot buy food. That's it, I will die. But then your brain also will tell your body, sorry, this is monism, body and brain and consciousness are the same in the monism. But your brain would say, but it doesn't hurt your body. You'll take the risk and steal the food so you can survive. Or you'll get some fruit of somebody else's tree so you will survive. This happened in Les Miserables. Okay? Jean Valjean, I think, stole a loaf of bread with a little boy, and he was in prison until he was adult. Okay? So it's a real dilemma in human rights. So is stealing a loaf of bread bad? The absolute definition, if you're blindfolded, yeah, it's bad because you're stealing. But if you look at the moral issue, but is there no obligation for human beings to help others to survive? And therefore, is stealing a loaf of bread bad? These are moral issues. Then it does not become absolute. It becomes, but there are moral issues. Would you rather the person die and not steal? Or would you rather the person steal and live? A loaf of bread. We're not talking about a bullion of gold. We're talking of a loaf of bread. Yeah. Then the moral issues becomes more dialectical. In metaphysics, stealing is stealing. A loaf of bread you steal is still a loaf of bread you stole. Okay. So you see that, huh? So it's very, very, very different. And then if you look at Jesus, where did Jesus come? It's after Aristotle, but before John Rawls, okay? Jesus was dialectical, and he's materialist. He's looking at his present life. He was saying, look, I don't know what he said. You are theologians. The old book says this, but I tell you, love one another. That's dialectical. As I have loved you, love God with all your heart, your soul, and whatever. Love others as you love yourself. That is very dialectical. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, you have heard it said, or if you look at Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, for example, because Matthew is the transition from the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, to the New Testament, you can see some of that transition between that which is considered, the law versus kind of the spirit of the law. But I don't want to go into that. I'll just say, I think I can see that this was trying to navigate both worlds with the religious leaders, with even the common people too.
Okay, thank you. And then remember how he was treated by the Pharisees and scribes and looked down on him? They say, oh, you go to the synagogue, but you don't wash your hands. So the Pharisees and scribes were very idealistic, bookish, okay? And therefore, their point of view is idealism and rationalism. But Jesus says, you hypocrites, you have the best seats in the temple, but look at the lives you're living. And Jesus was a materialist. He always responded to the here and now, where he was. There were people, the lepers, the dead, Zachariah, and then the hungry, the stoning women to death, which is not Muslim practice. It was a practice of the old days, Jews, what we now call Christians, what we now call Muslims. It was the people of the book. It was an ancient practice, stoning to death. And Jesus was living the here and now. And then he goes back to talking about his Father and the scriptures. And then he gave new teaching. He was not bookish. He was in fact saying, this is the new commandment I give you, right? That you love one another. So this is how you see how he differs from the Pharisees and the scribes. Okay. And how he treated women with respect. And his mother was always there, and so on and so forth. Okay. So it's good I remember that, and I came back to Jesus. Okay. So justice meant, and I told you that Amartya Sen was the student of John Rawls, even had a different meaning of justice. Amartya Sen, Indian, Bengali. He was materialist. And then dialectical, look at the material condition first, before you can say whether justice exists or not. Okay? But if you look at constitutions, it's all mostly saying this are formula, this is what it is. So we only look at the constitution first, only, then it's idealist. But if you play around with the reality first, then it's materialist. All right? So that's in essence the whole course of Dr. Mark on, are you already studying Alistair McIntyre? Not yet. Okay, that's a heavy book. It assumes you know Plato, Aristotle, Thucydides, Locke, Rousseau. It assumes. That's why if you took that first, it's too much. But Dr. Mark realizes it, and he says instead of students summarizing, he will discuss because it's too heavy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other questions or points on political science book first before we go to your literature review or paper? What about Ashe? No?
I don't even know how to ask questions.
Yeah, it's too much. I said, that's why I told you always, don't worry, for the literature review, I just want you to look for one contending set of theory only. And if that will come out in the comprehensive exam, I'll also say, give one set of contending theories of political science and its implications to peace building. That will be exactly the same question I will ask if that will come out in the. So you already have this answer for your literature copy paste, then that's done. But again, for publication, put the case study there, add or subtract text or length of words for publication. Okay, because that has a higher value for PAYA, research paper versus academic paper. So I hope that's clear. Huh? Yeah, for PAYA, you have two types of papers. Academic paper, it's literature review. You get new insights and so on. And you have research paper, this has higher value. You have case study, and then you do interview or field work or survey questionnaire, etc., etc. Okay, so we go by the Thai standard because we're in Thailand. That's how they value, and then new insights. This is basically a literature review, the academic paper. That's how they call it. Okay, so again, for your literature review, just focus on the literature, but again, I say, for your own good, either for our class paper, if you still have space, add a little case there, or when you go for publication, add the case later. It doesn't matter for me. Okay, but just think of the 6 pages. If you don't have enough space, then fine, put the case study there. Okay, so there being no questions from Ashe regarding the paper, the book, our course itself, both of you now, we can go to the literature review and your term paper. If you have issues, questions, or you need guidance, please. Maybe I'll give Ashe the floor first, since Kathy spoke. Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Ashay. I cannot hear you.
Oh, yeah. I have to mute myself.
I already asked him last week after the class, so I don't have much on this, but while I'm writing, if I'm confused, I'll ask again. And then, but then according after reading your email, I was just thinking to bring one question and then discuss in our class. Is it okay to give now?
Sure.
Yeah, so because we have a section you have given us, and then mine is like what is it? Political science and I forgot again. Government and politics, right?
Not sure.
Yeah, so here we are supposed to pick up from the SNAP dialogue and debate in the government and politics. So and then discuss. So I want to discuss about the biological men who had sex replacement surgery and are trans must be allowed to compete as women with biological women in a competitive sports and beauty contest, yes or no? So that was something that I was also last night, oh, this is interesting. So why don't we discuss in the class? And then we are not against the transgender, but we are discussing about like how is it okay to let them compete in the beauty pageants and sports? Of course, it's a big topic that the whole world is having a debate, but what do we, I just want us to discuss a little bit about this one also, so that when we respond to others or deal with these kind of things in our fields or in our places, we can also give a good answer also to them.
So do you want to answer first or let Kathy answer first? Tell her, please.
Yeah, we can discuss and just share our opinion about this.
Oh, Ashay, you're right. Or this is a very big topic in the world as we see Yes. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. As we see, not only Miss Universe Miss Universe, but also, at least from my perspective, coming from the United States sports, the competitions, and I guess this will be a question not only for US, but maybe in the future for Olympics and other international venues. So I think if I'm going to answer this question, I first want to unpack it a little bit. And what I mean by unpacking is because I think there's a lot of other related discussions that need to think to understand. So first of all, what I'm first wanting to say is that I think there is a culture or cultures around beauty, around aesthetics, as well as around the ideals of athleticism that are really rooted, some are rooted, come back all the way even as far back as even our earliest Greek and Roman philosophers. I'm sharing that is because that's where the origins of the highest values of individuals and society originate. And so I'm starting with that point because if you look, I think this comes out in the philosophy course that we took or that are taking now with Dr. Mark, that some of these values came from the very origins of what we might call as Western civilization. Okay, but also if we're going to do that, I think we also need to review what laws are in place and how those laws have evolved over time. And I'm going to share with you, again, I don't know enough, but I can just share with you again from the US perspective that females, those who identified as women, as girls, were not always able to compete in sports in the same way as boys growing up in US-based education at the school systems. And even in the communities, it's not just schools, but even communities, each community has their own rules around who can compete, who cannot compete. So those laws, you might be surprised to know, they're still pretty, I want to say relatively new. And what I mean by relatively new is they're not even like 50 years old. And you might think like, oh, US is so progressive and things like that. But in terms of athleticism, it was not always that way, that women and girls can compete in the same way. So in terms of university level sports, or even high school or elementary school for that matter, junior high school, we're still a little bit, I want to say, as US, you might think we're forerunners and we're pioneers when it comes to the thinking about who can and cannot compete. But I think more than anything else, I really think, especially now that we've talked about the philosophy as well as the political, I think there is really another question, another layer. I give you another layer, and that is the morality or the ethical discussions. And why I'm sharing that is because I think there's this really a discussion about who gets to be the quote unquote morality police around these matters. And these become almost, while they sound like culture wars, some of them are steeped in a religious discourse about masculinity and femininity, and because the lines seem to be blurred between that which is a woman or a man, especially in these very, very public contested spaces, because sports is a contest, right? Beauty is a contest. Somehow when you add the public spaces, because there's money at stake, there's industry at stake, but more than that is this morality discussion. And I think because this idea of what it means to be quote unquote, I'm using quote unquote because are we truly a Christian nation as the US? Are we trying to impose our rules, our values upon the world, and thinking about these ideas in terms of even a Christian worldview, for that matter, around that which is human, not just female versus male. So I do wonder, in order to be able to answer that kind of question, I think there are other questions that really need to be discussed and opened up as opposed to shut down. But here's the thing, these discussions are not always easily discussed even in civil discourse, and they're the topics of school boards. And I'm sharing that with you because the town where I used to live in the United States was the basis for some very, very deep, I want to call it fake news around students that were starting to say, oh, I'm not a girl, oh, I'm not a boy, but I'm a furry animal. And all of a sudden that fake news became viral and also led to very contested public school education elections in terms of who would represent those schools. And so I do wonder, until we can, this kind of conversation is, if you can think about it in terms of, on the very surface, it sounds like a very basic question. It's not a basic question because there's so many other layers to it. So I'm sharing a little bit of maybe my US perspective. If I were to come to Asia, I know that we have our own norms around beauty, around that which is feminine and masculine, and that is a whole other realm to discuss as well. So maybe I'll just stop there, Ashe. I'm not answering the question per se, except to say that who gets to debate this? Yeah, who gets to debate this is just as much a question. Is it the church? And who within the church, or who in the name of the church, and who gets to debate this if this is really a kind of cultural, because even though these are public spaces of sports and entertainment and beauty, who gets to debate this? This is part of the I think the challenge of this is not going to go away, because you cannot legislate this. You may try to legislate this, and you may try to say, oh, just create spaces where it, boys and girls and those who are non-gender binary can compete in the same way. So I don't know, Ashe, maybe we're looking for a straighter, better answer, a clearer answer, but I'm just trying to discuss with you, and maybe you want to take one of those points, and I'm already saying too much, so I'll stop.
Thank you, Sis Katie. Actually, I want to force both of you to answer this question, but
no one wants to answer.
No one wants to answer, yeah. Just kidding, yeah. Because my concern is it's not only in the secular world, but slowly we see that even in the theological institutes and then other things also, like there are things coming out that we need to be really prepared and then give a clear, of course, it's very difficult, but then from our own point of view, we have to be clear. That's what I feel like, because this topic, most of the time we live like this because it's very sensitive. So yeah, since you all know the context and know better these things, I want to know from both of you also. Yeah, thank you, Sis Katie. It helps. Yes, sir, you can.
Okay, thank you. I will now put on my microphone again. Okay. Okay, so I will now, can you, oh no, it's still your microphone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So sex is biological, and then gender would be social roles, and then you have sexual identities. Okay. In sex, you have biological, the traditional men, women, all kinds of hermaphrodites. You have firms, herms. This is real, huh? Let's say male with the fully developed male organs plus, for example, a female organ at the same time. Or you have male with, this is biological, one testes. I don't know how to spell singular. It's always plural, maybe. One testes. And then plus female organ. There are many permutations. Okay? In the past, this is called abnormality, but now it's called intersex. LGBTQI, this is the I. That's the politically correct word now. It's not abnormality now, it's considered, this is who you are. The problem in the past, because it's treated as a disease, a sickness, or abnormality, the parents at childbirth have to decide whether the child should be male or female. So they remove or cut off or whatever, extra organ or lack of organ, whatever from the child. And then the child, when they grow up, there are many horrors. You can go to YouTube. They would tell their stories like, why did they do this to me? I was not told, or I was 15 years old. They said I'll have a surgery. They didn't tell me what it was all about. They should have told me I want to be this and that. They're all on YouTube. Real people who are intersex. Some grew up intersex and are proud of it and are still intersex. But most in the past were forced to have surgery. That was the reality in the old days. It was considered abnormal. Okay, so now people are not ashamed of who they are because people say you have to face the reality. Not all people are men or women. They are intersex, biological. The problem is when politicians and people who are, whatever ideology they have or religion, it doesn't matter, use the wrong term to attack the other. They're mixing gender role, sexual identity, and sex. Like, for example, a woman say, I can do what men can do. Like, because I was born and raised in the Philippines, I was shocked to see like female driver in Shanghai. Like, wow, driving a big bus that has an accordion in the middle. I was like 15 years old or 16 years old when I went there. Actually, was not born yet. Like, and then there are female who are electrician climbing the electric poles. I was shocked to see that. But in China, it's like normal, right? And for Malaysians, I had Malaysian friends who told me when they visited the Philippines, they're surprised to see every director or almost every director is a woman. They said that doesn't happen in Malaysia, maybe in those days. It might have changed now. So that is role, that is not biology. Okay, so many people confuse gender role with biological sex and they fight, but they're talking of apples and oranges. Okay, you can be a man, but you say, I want to play the gender role of a woman, whatever that is in your society, expect that to be. So you're not saying I'm biologically a woman. I'm just saying I want to play the role of a woman, whatever that is. Now, there's no right or wrong. It changes over time and place. Sexual identity is, am I straight? Am I bi? Am I gay? Or there's so many now. Metrosexual. What else?
Pansexual.
Pansexual. Thank you. And asexual. And then, yeah, and sapiosexual. There are all kinds now. That is your sexual identity. So the problem, even among intellectuals who are debating now, they're mixing this vocabulary. They don't say, wait, are we on the realm of sex or are we on the realm of sexual identity? Or are we debating about gender? That is the problem going on now. It's all confusion. Say, oh, how can you say you're this and that when you're this and that? But they don't define their terms properly. Okay. So Asha gave us more headache than answers with her very heavy question. And then also, can a biological men who are self-identified women go to the same restroom and shower room? Okay. So many women are horrified, no? They know that you are a man, but you say you are self-identified as a woman. So, but then that self-identified woman who is a biological man says, I have the right to be in a woman's bathroom. Like, whose rights? That's the problem. Now, when you talk of rights, and, okay. Oh, I forgot. Then, if you want to go to philosophy, you can even have Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. All of these people before John Rawls. James Mill, John Stuart Mill, and Jeremy Bentham. It's utilitarianism. Which means majority rule. Majority wins. If greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That's the exact quotation. The problem with that is, what about the minorities? That's the problem. You see? So majority rule is not automatically the best, but for a long time, that is what we're told. So election, it's the majority. That's what people want. That's what it is. So if they will decide the minority should be killed, which happened in history in different parts of the world, then that's a problem. So now you also talk of minority rights. I don't know who's a major proponent, if there's a philosopher of minority rights. there should be someone, but I don't know who is the representative. We just know that, oh, I know now, sorry. Yes, President Wilson of the US, he played a key role. That's before John Rawls. Is it Woodrow Wilson? Yeah, I think so.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you. He talked about we should protect, this is in relation to Western Europe, because European map had always been changing. Let's say we have present-day Hungary, but they're German minority, for example. They're also, this is Ukraine. There's, of course, Russian minority, there are Hungarian minority, etc., etc. So it caused a lot of problem. So it was during the League of Nations, during the time of Woodrow Wilson, they said we should respect the rights of minority. He's not an academic, but this is a real world issue. It's equally important as all of the academics. The contribution to the idea that minorities have rights. As far as I can remember, it's Woodrow Wilson. Oh, and then again, how can I forget? Of course I can, because it's just one slide. We cannot put everything in. Anyway, let me try to put, after Woodrow Wilson, you have the United Nations. Universal human rights. Sorry? Oh, yes, Kathy.
So before you go to the idea of universal human rights, I'm not sure, we didn't read this, but it was quoted in one of the Oliver Richmond essays, I think, in the philosophy class. But this idea of can the subaltern speak? I didn't know if he or she is considered a philosopher.
Yes, maybe Spivak.
Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure to include or not.
Yes. Maybe Spivak and others. Subaltern, yes, thank you. Okay, it's the minority, the outcast, people in the margin, marginalized people on the margins, outcast, and so on, yes. I think a lot of these also are from India, the writings. The Adivasi theology, you also have Dalit theology. These are very strong in India. Like, not just the Hindu Brahmin. Thank you. Yeah, universal human rights was not by accident. Again, I think I mentioned this. This came, let me put it in proper order. Immanuel Kant. He had the idea of I always forget because of categorical imperative. There's certain things that all of us should have and respect, whoever you are. So if you look at the history of justice, it means different things according to different authors, not just different historical periods. Of course, historical periods have different focuses also. Now you're looking at history and philosophy. You would have, let's say, process. You have theocentric. No, I don't know if that's the first. Okay, when human beings started to think deeper, they say, what is life? Who created the world? So people had different ideas of God or gods everywhere on earth. And then you have, you have the time of, let's say, the ancient Greeks. They thought of, oh, we can create ideas and see how we are, as we are related to the world. Oh, maybe, but there's also before that you have geocentric. You look at the world and say, oh, the earth is the center of the universe, this is it. And then we changed later. We had heliocentric now. We look at the sun as the center of the universe. So we don't see ourselves as separate from the universe, from the earth and the sun, but we rotate around the sun. So our sense of identity had been changing. And then what else? Okay, Kathy, were you raising your hand? You want to say something? Okay. And then, okay, now we have the ecocentric. We should not be focused on the human beings, but we should focus on life as it is in the whole planet. Because we're destroying it, then we should think of climate justice, environmentalism, and rights of animals. Oh, sorry, before that, deep ecology. So we should not just say human beings, oh, I forgot. That is speciesism, human speciesism. Meaning we are the center of the universe and everything should serve our interest. We are a special species among species. And not all, even gorillas, orangutan do not compare to us. We are special and everything should serve our interest. If we want to eat orangutan, it's our right to do so, to hunt them and eat them because we're different. But they're competing interests. I think this is Levi Bautista, global. But if you want to work globally, you still have to work locally. You cannot separate the two. And local issues are very specific too, which might be different from the global. But we should not separate the global from the local. Okay. And how do you call the period before we had sense of God? We live with nature. Is there a word for that? I don't have. So maybe, yeah, Kathy, you have a word for that? The early stages. We invented fire, at least we claim.
I think I'm using an incorrect term. I think I was thinking incorrectly. So I was just trying to think in terms of naturalism or something like that. But that's
maybe that's the closest. Maybe that's a correct word. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So so philosophically, we were thinking so differently. And then Renaissance was not theocentric anymore. We forget God. It's humans, right? So the human speciesism the scientific human speciesism became central. And then now you have all the different ideas. Okay, and then you have the culture war somewhere there. We are in culture wars now. Who's a woman, who's a man? I dare not explain who's a woman. Again, Asher might sue me, or Kathy, as Jordan Peterson had been sued, left and right. Okay, so let's have a break, coffee break, and we'll be back in, let's say, 10:15. Then, okay. Thank you, Asher, for your question. Men and women, we have no answer after exploring your question. Okay, we'll be back in 10 minutes, which means 10:28. Yeah, okay, thank you. No. The recording? Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll share the slides. Okay, yeah.
Because we cannot differentiate like this. That's why it's making sense.
We'll start resume now. So it's Kathy's turn now. So we're ping-ponging back and forth.
So should I take one of the subjects or the questions from my chapter? I didn't know if even with the three of us, without Chris, we should still proceed with our original plan for today. Is that okay?
If you have something you want to discuss, like Ashe, if not, we can jump to the literature review, your homework, or your term paper. It's up to you.
I think the chapter 5 that was assigned to me has so many really good questions, and I noticed most of them are really US based, although they can definitely be applied to any particular situation also. Yeah, so I don't have enough to share yet about my literature review, but I think the general questions, because this is the first time that I'm encountering this kind of assignment for our course, I want to just double check. It's similar to what Ray was my advisor in the selected readings last semester, Ashe. So I know you already have Ray as professor, and maybe you have this literature review assignment. So please forgive my my basic questions in case they are already something you already discussed. So is it okay if I just ask some basic questions? Is it okay? So just in terms of the literature review, I have several topics that I would like to consider, but just to be clear, when you had prepared parameters for the selected readings, Ray, you had said things like 5 years in terms of the most seminal classical works. And then it can be mostly, obviously, journal articles, but it might be book chapters as well. And I do not know, in terms of a literature review, I can understand this is more than just, how do you say, I'm not going to call it just a data dump, because it's a really effective way of synthesizing the information that is available. And then also related to that is actually saying, okay, based on the literature review, here are the future research options that we have for this particular topic. So I just want to make sure I understood exactly what is being expected, because otherwise this literature review obviously can be more than 6 pages, but we're limited. So yeah, so can you help me to understand what are those parameters? That's my question.
Okay, first.
Okay, I don't know whether I will be answering on the right topic or not, but last time what I wrote was like on the comparative integrative literature review on human rights and peace building. And then we were also so confused, but Sir guided us. And then now I'm so happy that at least I have that one in my, that I can use anywhere. So what I did was human rights and the peace building. I compared. First is like definition of the human rights, and then second is the peace building, and then theoretical and practical challenges between human rights and conflict resolutions from all the resources that was provided by Sir, and like principle versus pragmatism, legalism versus leniency, and what is it? Economic interest, short-sightedness, lack of collaborations, those things, and then bring out a chart, a summary in the column, and then another section was like before the conclusion, opportunities for expanding and integrating human rights and conflict resolution. So that was more of our own thoughts and then ideas. And then changing milieu, cross-disciplinary and multi-dimension approach. And after that, a conclusion and the recommendations. That was what I did in the last paper. And then it was very hard, but now when I look back, I feel good. And then one day maybe with a case study, I will publish that what I'm thinking. Yes. that was my experience, and then it was good. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give maybe an example because I know Ashe might work on gender. I don't know. So first, define the term. Like always, you have to use the literature. And then from here, maybe she would say there are 3 schools of thought. Okay, so maybe she wanted to say the first wave. Maybe she'll talk about this. Second wave is like this. And then the third wave of, let's say, feminism is like this. So she can give the discussion of each, and then maybe after that she would give, after explaining to us what it is, she will give us the critique of each. For example, what is missing? Usually it's easy to do that. The critique of first would say, let's say it's suffragette, it only focuses on the white women's right to vote. That's the critique. So the rise of the second wave. And then the rise of the second wave, there's a critique because it only responded to this. Okay. And then from there, you can produce your recommendation or case study. You can talk about the suffragette in New York, wherever, or in Switzerland, women were only given the right as recently as in the 1970s. Such a rich Western global North country got women's rights so late. For example, she can do research. It's 6 pages, no? And then second wave, again, what's the second wave of feminism? I forgot now. The domestic sphere. Okay, so was the invention of the washing machine and the dishwasher in the West. It liberated the women from household chores. So with the push of a button, so the woman can go out to seek gainful employment. So she'll give a case study. Maybe, yeah, this might have risen in Western Europe and US. However, in Nagaland, it's like this. It happened. You can talk like this. And third wave, it's about, what is it? Again, actually, okay. And then she can say maybe recommendation. This will be at the end because that's the next move. But already she had built in the case study. She has the analysis. This is first wave analysis. So telling us what it is. And then this is the second wave analysis. Third wave analysis. And then the critique. Her recommendation will be the synthesis of everything. Now we're at this stage. We will move forward to doing this. It will be her own opinion. It won't be right or wrong. It's her idea. Okay. For this class, for class papers, you don't have to do an in-depth research. The basis would be the textbook, not my textbook, but the sources I cited. You all have copies of those readings. So go back to, it will be easier because this is only for the class. It's an exercise and for the qualifying exam. It's not like a full-blown, all kinds of literature review. Use your books as the launching pad from which you will do your review. So Ashe, you use our class textbooks, right? Human rights and peace building, yeah. So using the readings, you synthesize from the different authors. So Ashe, by luck, I gave you like 3 or 4 or 5 books. I said, choose one. So all of them talk of gender. You can pick from all of those. Maybe one book will be your backbone, the others supplementary readings. If you have extra time, then go for the latest 5-year publication. But I don't require that for a class literature review. It's a less ambitious, or it's non-ambitious. Okay, let's put it that way. It is to synthesize what you've learned in this class. Okay, it's not ambitious. It's not your dissertation is ambitious, and I say you have to satisfy each and every faculty member's style. And we are 4 faculty here, and we have 4 different styles. There's no escaping any style. And also the external committee might be from England, Singapore, US, who knows? Yeah. Okay, I hope that's clear, Kathy. I gave an example of Ashe because I think she might work on gender issues.
Okay, no, it's helpful. I understand now. Thank you very much. It's a little bit different from the selected readings because, yeah, I can appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is just, yeah. In fact, this is small compared to the human rights and peace building class. They had to synthesize the whole class for that paper. This one is one teeny weeny little paper that you want to study. And here, the contending theories are the first wave, second wave, and third wave. These are the 3 theories of feminism. Okay, so it's a very small paper. I don't expect a big paper. So this will be the smallest paper compared to the last semester literature review. It's a whole class. And then for dissertation, it's a big, real literature review. Okay, now back to Ashe, you have a question or something to clarify for your literature review or your paper? Okay, for undergraduate, this is standard in the US. You must have at least 5 literature review. Reference list. So this is graduate, so maybe, shall I say 10? Is that fair? Because this is PhD. Is that too much? The 5, you must have used 5 books for college. You already have 5 books. Oh, from those books, there are references. You can go back to the books that they cited. Is 10 too much or what? Maybe too much. 7 or 8? 5 and above. Okay, no, 6 and or above. So you
Maybe
need the minimum.
Yeah, because of the page limit. The page limit. Yeah, I think 10 is a little bit on the high side, but yeah, maybe you say minimum 6.
Okay, minimum 6. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's due next week, isn't it? Yeah. So it's a small project that you already have done.
2 weeks from now. Yeah, 2 weeks from now.
What's next week?
Next week.
Study for term paper.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you just explore a topic for your term paper. Okay, good. Okay.
Next week we share our proposals, right?
Yes.
For our case study.
Yeah. Okay. Don't scare Ashe. It's just like what you propose to do. It doesn't have to be a formal, full proposal. Don't scare Ashe. If you have a full proposal, fine, Kathy, but don't use that word.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Because in the revised syllabus, you gave a little chart, and that chart is very similar to what anyone who will be preparing a conference potential publication, something like that. So that's why I was saying formal, but as you said, it can be informal also. Yeah.
So don't be scared, Ashe. It's okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's go back to, is it Kathy's turn now? Yeah, Kathy. If you have question issues or.
Oh, I already had my question about this literature review. So it's back to Ashe, actually. It's Ashe's turn.
Ashe, do you have issues, concerns? No. Okay. So that's fine. We can end the class today. And then I'll share with you the PowerPoint file. Okay. And then that's it. So I'll see you next week with your proposed topic. And I use the word proposed topic. The word is there, but it's hidden. It's hidden. Okay. So see you next week with your proposed topic. And then 2 weeks from now, your written literature review and your PowerPoint slide. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, see you next week.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
When,
Come in.
when we're doing our presentation, maybe I forgot to ask, should we have a time limit? I don't know if that's part of our presentation also, because in the past you were helping to train us to stay within like minutes. I didn't know. I'm not trying to scare Ashe, but just so that way, you know, we know, because we're presenting our papers as well as the PowerPoint, should we have a time limit for each of us?
So Ashe and Kathy, what do you think should be the maximum number of minutes for a case study that you want to propose?
Oh, yeah, not the case.
The literature review.
Oh, yeah, sorry, to be clear, this is not about the case study yet, not about the case study, but it's about the actual formal presentation of our literature review when it comes to the PowerPoint presentation that will happen in a few weeks. This is not about the case study, it's about the literature review and the formal.
What do you think, Kathy and Ashe, would be good? What do you propose? How short or long?
I don't know. Anything. Yeah, I will just follow.
Yeah. Because we are small class.
To you, Kathy?
We're a small class. I think it would be really helpful because to not only have a time for us to present, but to have a rich kind of time of response as well. So I think that's where, to me, I learn not only from hearing about people's presentations, but the chance to respond back. So I wonder if we can have, I just propose something like this, 15 minutes of actual formal presentation and then another 15 minutes maximum for Q&A. So each person, so if this includes Myo, that will be 4 of us, right? That will be 4 of us. So that ends up being almost 2 hours, but with a break, maybe 2 people and then a break and then 2 people again, something like that. Is it appropriate? Again, I'm just throwing it out as an idea. We can hear from Chris and Myo as well.
That's a good idea. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, then we can raise it next week again if that's okay.
We can. All right, let's discuss again. Oh, we're on research break, so maybe we have to put it in email then.
Next week is research break? No.
Yes. Yeah.
Check
no, not. It's the proposals. Yes, it's the proposed topic. Sorry, we can still discuss. Yeah, we can still discuss.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Enjoy your lunch.
Hey, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye now. Okay, I'll share the slides. Thank you.